Those are striking terms. A flat Earth report. Those are striking terms.
All right, thanks for joining. Go ahead and share the stream. I'm going to play a couple of clips from predictions for 2018, which I just found, and then I'm going to try to find my predictions for 2019. We're joined today by people on Periscope, YouTube, Instagram, Float, Facebook, Twitch, and DLive. So wherever you are, just go ahead and share that platform. Share the link if you don't mind. And what I'm going to play for you here is something that, look, this is fascinating because it almost sounds like a cycle. Well, it is a cycle, but it's just like history repeating itself. So this was a clip from 2 years ago, when 2 years ago there was an unexplained projectile, rocket, missile, something above the West Coast. And I'm going to go ahead and play this. It's from 2 years ago because this just happened again this year. There was a big sighting above Vegas. And 2 years ago today, or 1 year ago today, there was a sighting above the West Coast, which they blamed on a missile test. So I've just been noting how now 3 years in a row, 3 years in a row, the winter solstice has been attended by an unexplained light in the sky. And I think this is meant to tie into the whole Christmas star in that story. I think it's theater. But take a listen. Last week I said, they don't care whether you're, however you decide, or however you are genuflecting before the power of state. They don't care whether you worship state with its awesome technological prowess at Johnson Space Center. They don't care if you worship the state in the form of religion, as in bowing to the obelisk, genuflecting before the obelisk, St. Peter's Basilica, symbol of the sun god, resurrection. They don't care if you worship government. You know, as long as you have the Washington Monument, the obelisk, or whether you're cowering in fear before the obelisk of the North Koreans, which is described to you as a missile that could destroy you, but it's just another obelisk they're waving around. So all they're having you do here is, right now, the people staring at this thing, not knowing what it is, left in need of a priesthood to define what they just saw, they were just given a mystery. This is all psychodrama. This was to place them in a state of suggestibility and worship before the awesome power of the state. This is them. It's obelisk worship. Exploration of fake space says, looks like they're busting a load in fake space. Well, that's exactly it. SpaceX even calls it their payload. And the obelisk represents the male, the fertility god. The sky is the womb of the goddess, which is impregnated when the rocket goes up. Ancient sun worship, ancient astrotheology. Okay, that was from my assessment 2 years ago. Commenter says, I saw that one with my own eyes. It was blue, hung in the sky over Palm Springs for an hour. Yeah, it was definitely a light show for the public, and it was meant to be seen. It's like Project Bluebeam Light. But what caught my attention was that it happened on the solstice, and so I recognized this was, likely more than a coincidence. Well, then it turns out the very next year it happens again. And this year, this time we had thousands of people reporting this large object above Vegas. And again, I think it's timed with the sun, its journey, and the personification of the sun. Okay, let's see. USS Ross arrives in Ukraine after simulated Russian attack. This was yesterday. So this idea of space war is being hyped up. and the lines are being drawn. It's going to be the space race all over again. And the race now, the objective is it's not to get to the moon first. It's who's going to define the space migration and how we actually move into space and what we bring back. Are we going to be mining from space to create wealth on Earth? Or are we moving to other planets? Are we going to make them green? Or are we going to repeat the mistakes we made here? It's one of the things that we've seen this narrative building up where they may have to create a big schism here with how we approach space because Americans are not cooperating with the whole green world order. So just the fact that there are simulated attacks, like what's the value in this? Like really? Simulated missile attack on the Ross as it transited the Black Sea on the solstice. We were supposed to be killed by an asteroid on the solstice. North Korea was supposed to kill us on the solstice. And on the solstice, we had a simulated Russian attack. And I just bring this up because the simulations tend to correspond with the quote real thing, or what the public thinks to be the real thing, on the nightly news sometime after. I mean, it's noteworthy that Gilroy, for example, this is just one of these shootings this summer I was looking into recently again. No sorts of mass violence there ever. Then they have a drill for it, and then it happens, and the FBI is on the scene. Okay, here's something else. This ties into it. Boeing again, and Boeing provides all the engineering support for the ISS, and have been suggesting that they're going to be involved in the bringing down of this thing. And it was Boeing Max that crashed. I think it was on March 11th, which we predicted something big was going to happen that day because they keep on tying events into certain dates because of the numbers, numerology. I don't believe in it, but we see it. So it's like 3/11 we predicted something big's going to happen, and you had the Boeing Max crashing. Well, Boeing fits into the picture quite a lot with this space opera, and they had a botched launch recently. And here, now we have Boeing practicing emergency astronaut recovery. Interesting timing. You know, we're closing in on the end of the 33rd year since the Challenger exploded. So I was thinking this is probably going to be the year they bring down the space station. And so NASA is actually practicing these emergency procedures. It says these capsules that they're testing out will actually be used to abandon ship, and then you just splash down into the ocean. So just think it's noteworthy that, you know, this is the script. We're following the script, and they're putting it out there. It's in the storyline here that, yeah, they're trained for this. If something goes wrong on the space station, if a cosmonaut drills a hole in it, if the power goes off or they're unable to get boosted again, before it tumbles through the atmosphere and burns them all alive, look, we have a procedure. And look, they even have it where at the bottom of this drill, the astronaut's getting CPR, and I think he's still wearing the helmet. But see, they drill for everything. And everything they drill for is, you can look at it really just as a rehearsal. And look, this guy got he's a water bottle in his pocket. Let's look for lanyards. It's just funny, all these drills kind of look the same after a while. You can tell. Look for clipboards, look for lanyards, look for Windex bottles with fake blood. So they're rehearsing for some big disaster, just a heads up. Again, 33rd year since the Challenger explosion, and there is a pattern here. So for example, yeah, Evolvement says drill equals script. Yeah, they actually have scripts, and someone found the script for Sandy Hook, for example. But they do drill everything in advance. This is another article here about celebrities who think the earth is flat. I thought this was worth noting because the top 20 names, you know, who do you associate with flat earth? And it's funny how they always reach towards celebrities. And Samuel Shelton is the first one on the list. This is the guy who founded the Flat Earth Society in 1956, and nobody gives him any credit. People say, oh, Eric Dubay has his 200 proofs. Well, did Eric Dubay, aka Jay DeCaspi, did he write the 200 proofs, or did he just read them on YouTube? He read them. Now, that's a good thing. We're not against people reading or digging stuff up, but he didn't say, hey, shout out to the Flat Earth Society for all this information that I can create a channel based on. He acts like he owns it or he created it, which he did not. And my point is, this Flat Earth Society has been given pretty much the shaft from the community. Everyone's like, well, these guys are all shills. Really? Because from what I can see, it's just a bunch of people on a web forum who don't do anything. Not doing anything doesn't mean shill. The ones that we have observed to be acting in ways that we would consider to be shilly want nothing to do with the Flat Earth Society. It's very interesting. It's almost like they don't want the Flat Earth Society to grow really big and be taken seriously. So they create this spin off group that says, pay no attention to them. And if you do some digging on these characters, you find out that, yeah, they were offering legitimate criticisms against NASA from day one. Cam B says, I watched Star Wars last night. The rebels are the truthers, and they want us to feel isolated and alone. Yeah, that came out on the solstice because Skywalker Rising, it's a reference to the new sun defeating the old sun. And the old sun is the Reaper. The old sun is the skull-faced Reaper, the god of the harvest, wears the black robes and the scythe, and they brought that character back in the form of Darth Vader, who's the old sun. And the new sun is Luke Skywalker. Light Skywalker walks across the sky. Luke, I'm your father, only makes sense if you understand the astrotheological myth here, where the real meaning of that line is that the sun god reincarnates every day as himself, and it's this eternally repeating cycle. But Star Wars coming out on the solstice, it's part of getting the whole public also to participate in the Mass. You didn't go to church, you don't go to Catholic church anymore on Sundays for Christmas. Maybe you outgrew it, maybe it wasn't part of your life, but you still got the same stories implanted in your brain, I guarantee it. You got the gist of it. You got the gist of the astrotheological myth. You got your sun worship ceremonies, broadcasted into these movie theaters, and it looks like entertainment, which it is. I mean, and religion is entertaining. Church is meant to be entertaining. That's why they have all the costumes and the set and everything else, the music. Number 2 on the list is Mad Mike Hughes. Daredevil Mad Mike Hughes goes by the name Mike. During the day, he works as a limo driver. However, his hobby has literally skyrocketed him into fame. He's known as the flat earth conspiracy theorist who flies in self-built rockets. He wants to see for himself if the earth is flat. And after that, it kind of falls apart. They mention a few celebrities. Carl Froch. This was the boxer who won 33 rounds, and he says the earth is flat 100%, no curvature. I don't know what his deal is. He's just a boxer. There's someone else. There's a few other celebrities. Now, this is an actress, Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things. And she also said she was a believer in flat earth, or a flat earther is what she called herself. But she said it in a very kind of casual, flippant manner, so. All right, let's move on. They mentioned Dave Murphy here, who is definitely one. I think he did a very good job on mainstream media outlets, describing this thing. But then they did send out the soft hit pieces, and every one of these pieces they do on this topic is actually a hit piece, which shouldn't surprise you. And the mainstream media is there to defend a worldview and to attack those who disagree with it. Okay, this is an article here called How Disinformation Hacks Your Brain. And this is fascinating because this is Scientific American explaining how the mainstream media works while trying to warn us about conspiracy theories. And they just make the case that the more you're exposed to something, the more you're acclimated to it, the less that you're going to challenge it when you're actually consider it seriously. So you can be conditioned. They call it the illusory truth effect, or I would call it the echo chamber effect. But basically, The more familiar you are with the concept, the more fluent you are in it, the easier it will be for you to think it's true if you find a compelling argument. And so, what Scientific American has pointed out here is that the digital age has heightened our vulnerability to falsehood. Now, this is all definitely misdirection because the mainstream media is nothing but falsehood. They're trying to guard us against truth. It's an insightful piece. I'll put a link. It's not only insightful, but it's remarkable how they report this with no sense of irony because it completely describes how the mainstream media functions. And they seem to think it only applies to conspiracy theorists. This came out yesterday from Quartz, the Mandela Effect. Casual misconceptions or conspiracy theories. This topic is kind of getting more and more popular as the flat earth community, which is not interested in the edge. See, there's two groups of flat earthers. About 70% of them want to build a community and have conferences and become Christians. And then the other 30% are trying to find out the answers. Those would be the seekers, that would be us. But the ones who don't want to talk about the edge are trying to find a way to keep flat earth interesting. So now, like there's a New Year's Eve party in Chicago, a pizza party, a flat earth pizza party hosted by Mark Sargent, where they're going to talk about the Mandela effect. What does the Mandela effect have to do with flat earth? The Mandela effect is the rejection of objective reality. Flat earth is insisting that objective reality has been carefully hidden. So I'm looking at this, casual misconceptions or conspiracy theories, and I'm like, wait, it must just be this. The conference earthers no longer have anything interesting to say. All they do is they suck up to celebrities. They suck up to B-listers and D-listers. That's all they do. Prove me wrong. That's all they do. They kiss media ass 24/7. Please accept us. And then they, of course, turn it into a religious cult. Meanwhile, none of them bother to talk about the edge, and they've been banned. You will never hear any of the big channels mention the Infinite Plane Society. They may try to allude to it, but they will never mention what we are, what we do, what we've done. They really don't want to. They want to minimize it because we're the only ones who have any relevance here. We're the only ones who are pushing for the edge. They're pushing for bigger conferences, which isn't happening. Their conference this year was smaller and less interesting. Smaller and less interesting if you gauge by the media coverage and the stories that came out afterward. Very little coverage. The media just yawned. So they're bringing the Mandela effect into it to make it a thing again. They think the Mandela effect might somehow bring new blood into the fold or something. So Quartz does a story on the ME, which again is a rejection of objective reality instead of an insistence upon it. I really don't think you can be an objectivist flat earther, which is what you would have to be, to say that you're like, well, I'm not going to believe in dogma or arguments from faith, and I'm not going to trust these cartoons. I need proof. I need to see objective evidence. Okay, fine. Demand objective evidence all day long for the flat earth, but then when somebody asks for objective evidence about any of your Mandela effects, there's none. Isn't that kind of a contradiction? So, it went viral in 2015. I mean, it's been a thing for a while. It was created in... Oh, look at this one. This is actually a timeline of it. Brief history. 1896. Sigmund Freud writes a paper about false memories due to his theory of repression. Now, the reason I bring this up, let me just jump to the end so you know why I'm talking about the Mandela effect again. Here's why. It says here, technology is making it harder to acknowledge instances of the Mandela effect. We live in an era in which we are encouraged to believe our own misconceptions. And then we create communities around misinformation. And this selective exposure shows that we're more likely to remember false events if they fit our pre-existing opinions. So Quartz is talking about how this is known in our brains, how our brains function. This is a part of how we learn and how we create misconceptions for ourselves and reinforce them. So what they're suggesting here, listen to this, the past is at stake. Fake videos that look real can alter perceptions of major events. The work of historians is now more crucial now than ever. So now those of us who have conflicting opinions are now threatening the integrity of the entire narrative and the past because of this. And we're seeing it manifested in the Mandela effect. Listen to this. The reason for the widespread misconceptions about Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I'm your father," is that the memory isn't stored as a moment in time, but is constructed from different pieces of information, more like a video editor than a videotape. The misattribution is called schema-driven errors. These misconceptions occur for all these various reasons, which they go into, confabulation and other things. But the bottom line is this. It's scary to realize we can't fully trust our own brains with our memories. And I'm looking at this as, well, look, the people who created the Mandela effect know how it works, and that's how they're tapping into this. Like, I would actually say that the Mandela effect was created by intelligence agencies who know how to create malfunctions, who know how to create misconceptions, misperceptions. I mean, think about it. What was 9/11? 9/11, or what was fill in the blank school shooting? These events were used by the media knowing that they can get you to reach an erroneous conclusion. So when it comes down to it, you're talking about emotional responses to stimuli, reaching conclusion, being led to leap to conclusions by the media whenever you have one of these charged events. So is there really a major difference between thinking that he said, "Luke, I'm your father," and thinking that 9/11 is real? Like, in other words, this is a deliberate psychological operation to give you misconceptions, to give you misremembrances. That's exactly what it looks like to me. So, 1932, psychologist Frederick Bartlett published a book, Remembering, where he details schema theory and how the mind omits unfamiliar details and transforms it to make it easier to recall. 1974, psychologist Elizabeth Loftus published research showing the reconstruction of false memories from car accidents based on how people are questioned about them. So if you remember, this is from Psychology 101, where they did a study showing that if you asked people, how fast was that car going before it crashed into the other car, and you show them a video. Then you ask another group, how fast was that car traveling before it impacted the other car? Well, the people who were asked how fast was it going when it crashed doubled their estimate. Oh, it was 60 miles per hour. The people who were told how far was it traveling when it impacted said 30. So the way that you frame the question has a lot to do with how people recall it. And recalling it, again, it's not accessing a tape, a stored perfect memory. The recall is actually a reconstruction that can be influenced by the interrogator's bias. And every Mandela effect pusher is serving as an interrogator. Now here's an interesting one. Princess Diana's car crash is a big Mandela effect. Well, the people who fall for the Mandela effect think that the car crash that they saw was the actual footage and it conflicts with the story. Well, what they saw was actually a simulation of the car crash. This is where it's at. It says they followed a movie, Mandela. It gets no attention. And now 2020, this is mainstreamed. Yeah, the movie just came out. And a lot of the Mandela affected don't want to watch it. They think it's going to mislead people. Whatever that means. Okay, so 2009, Fiona Broome launched MandelaEffect.com. Now, that's a nom de plume. Fiona is a big witchy name. Broome might as well be broomstick. She's a necromancer, a witch, and a ghost hunter. And she decides that the Mandela effect explains ghosts, that CERN has basically tapped into this multiverse and now timelines are crossing. Okay, Nelson Mandela died in 2013 at the age of 95. And of course, this is a big misconception that he had died in prison before. And then the next year, Berenstain Bears goes viral. Listen to this. This is again, we're talking about the media is finally paying attention to it, and now they're coming to the conclusion, and that's what I found in this article here was their conclusion was this means that life is more dangerous because people can fall prey to misinformation and misremembrances which are reinforced by their communities. So any erroneous belief, anything whatsoever, pretty much has a community online, and you just go into that community and you get it reinforced. Is it a good thing? I mean, it depends on whether or not you have any sort of loyalty to objective reality. But listen to this, the way they say it though. Fake videos that look real can alter perceptions of real events. So this is where they get the argument that, we can't even have conspiracy theory videos. Commenter says, I wondered if it was real, it could be constructed. No, it can't be. They can't physically do it. The miracles attributed to the Mandela effect are impossible. And there's no way you can assert it could be even theoretically possible. Ask Barbara Streisand. Pictures leaked of her yard, or rather her beachfront property, where she's talking about soil erosion and ocean levels rising, and here she is, beachfront property, and she tried to hide that picture. And her attempt to suppress that picture on the internet blew it up. So it was impossible to hide. They call it the Barbara Streisand effect. So what I'm saying is you can't change everything of one product. You couldn't hide every copy of Berenstain Bears. You couldn't change it. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. So if you think that's even plausible, you believe in Santa Claus. Only Santa Claus can go to everybody's house in the same night and stuff every single stocking full of presents and eat the cookies and milk and make it back, before the sun rises. Only Santa Claus can do that. Santa Claus doesn't exist. And the people asserting the existence of Santa Claus are liars, or they're delusional, or they're children. Same goes for Bigfoot. Same goes for aliens. Same goes for many things. And anybody who says everybody knows, and look, I talked to one yesterday, he called me up, and he's like, look, everybody knows, or you can't have this many people misremembering. And I'm saying you can't have this many people misremembering. I said, what school did you go to? Half the kids that I knew failed their first, like they fail history tests all the time. Nobody aces it. They get facts wrong all the time. I said, were you at a school where everybody was 4.0? And I even asked him, I said, will you please let me know if you can admit that you're using an argument ad populum? And he said, no, I'm not. Everybody knows it's true. And I said, well, the argument ad populum is saying because everybody knows it's true. Are you not using that logical fallacy? And he's like, no. So you can use that against them. If people are trying to assert something based on a consensus, whether it's global warming, climate change, judgment of God, or Mandela effect, you can basically just call them out on that particular fallacy, and we have to. Now look, here's another thing here. This is a poll. Do you remember Berenstain or Berenstain Bears? Now they give you this option, but they never give you a third. So this one here says, I don't have an opinion on this, Berenstain or Berenstein. Well, the pushers never give you the third option. You never get an opt-out. And how come there's no one who remembers it as Bronstain? You got Jif or Jiffy. How come there's no Jift? How come everyone says Dolly has braces? It's like, I thought Dolly had a ponytail. Is that not a Mandela effect? Dolly had a ponytail and braces. Okay, so I'm going to move on from this article, this piece again. A number of points in here where it seems like they're again trying to scare the public against or about unmediated information. Unmediated information. Listen to these explanations. These are fantastic. It says here, when we use schemas, and these are schema driven errors, okay? So this is talking about the theory about how we come up with these misremembrances or misattributions. It says when we use schemas, which are pockets of information, it will generalize things. So Luke, I'm your father might roll off the tongue more easily, and when it's repeated, it's ingrained in the mind. Commenter says, I called it Bernstein. Okay, so again, you think it's Bernstein, some think it's Berenstain, Berenstein, you probably have Bernstein. How come these aren't all splinter realities? How come we're not talking about, now we've got 9 different timelines? Nope. You only have approved Mandela effects. So is there a pope of the Church of Mandela? But look how they connect it here to everything else. They say, in an era of flat earth proponents and fake news and Alex Jones, the Mandela effect represents a new threat to facts. A new threat to facts. This is the bottom line. This is the line I was looking for. This is the takeaway. Flat earth, Mandela effect, facts are threatened. Do you realize how contradictory that is? If you're Mandela affected, you have no business calling the earth flat. If you're Mandela affected, you have actually already accepted simulation theory, spinning ball, and multiverse. Flat stationary plane with objective reality, objective up and down. It's completely the opposite of relativity, of everything being relative, of space and everything else. So, no, they did this as an attack. So anybody who's a clear perceiver who sees through pseudoscience or sees through fake news is now being associated with the Mandela effect, which again poses a threat to facts. Mudflutter says, my ex only said the line, Luke, come to the dark side. So there must be a population who remembers the actual hook from the movie. Right, I remember a bumper sticker I saw that said, come to the dark side, we have cookies. And I swear, I thought that was from the movie. Isn't that a Mandela effect? Didn't Darth Vader say, come to the dark side, Luke, we have cookies? Full Metal Jacket Bear says, the truth doesn't change. Thank you, finally. The truth doesn't change. Objective reality doesn't change. Bottom line. If you say it does, you're a liar. Plain Jane says, Google is a threat to facts. Exactly. And that's really what I'm noting here, is that look who's calling who misinformation. You know, I mean, look, it's Kettle. I mean, we're not even misinformation. It's interesting. It's projection, I guess you would call it. It's not even the pot calling the tea kettle black. We're talking about the fake news is getting mad because now there's real news, and there's never been real news before. This is real news. This is real objective analysis and parsing of observable facts without jumping to conclusions based on tradition or faith or, habit or dogma. This is where it's at. Says, let's start an IPS Mandela and monetize it. We probably could. We could probably start our own Mandela effects. I came up with a few if we wanted to, and it's just a numbers game. We'll create a 10, like a short list. Let's come up with like our 10 new Mandela effects for 2020, and then I'll email it to Shane Dawson. He'll make it popular, and now you'll have a new wave of Mandelards. Last night we had a long hangout. I think we were up at like 4 hours. We were talking about serial killers with the last caller, and raising a lot of interesting questions about how many of these things need to be re-examined. And someone posted this link, and I bookmarked it. So thanks for posting the link. That's why I opened the chat. This is, it is a think tank, and people have great resources, and that's why I give you the wrenches. That's why I encourage you to post links. They sent me this one from Miles Mathis about Ted Bundy, where they're considering that Ted Bundy's killing spree might have been manufactured by the FBI, CIA, DIA, ONI, and the media. And there are many reasons why it's a psychological operation, but much of it is narrative and, well, it's Psywar. I'll get into this. This is a separate topic, but it's good news. It's good news for those of you who studied true crime, who felt bad for all these victims, who, can look at this and say with certainty that, okay, well, there's reasons to think that the Ted Bundy thing was another media hoax, that they use serial killers then the way that they use mass shooters now. All the the bowl cuts with the frowny faces that are shooting up the schools, those are all fake. And there are some indications that many of these high profile serial killings have also been just as fake. Okay, so I'm going to be back on later to take calls. There are plenty of things to talk about today. I do want to give you a link to this Miles Mathis article. I saw Cam B was in here. Miles Mathis is the author who says that, or he believes that Tupac wasn't Tupac, that he was an actor playing Tupac. And I saw that Cam B's being doxxed again by the person who he thinks that Tupac is now, well, not Tupac, but the actor who played Tupac is now portraying. Very interesting one. Another one, too, that we need to take a second look at, because I found a lot more to substantiate this one. Brandon Lee and Christopher Green. Christopher Green, AMTV, truther, conspiracy theorist, widely believed now to be none other than Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son. And there was a person who did a close look, and he found multiple matching birthmarks. Pretty damning, if you ask me. And they also showed one other thing, and this is a common thing too, how they do the nose job. How we talk about prosthetic noses all the time. You look at how Nicole Kidman portrayed. Let me see if I can pull this up for you really quick, because this was a good one. She played Virginia Woolf, and she used a prosthetic nose, and it completely changed her appearance, where you would not think this was the same woman. And again, aside from the hair dye, they changed the face with a prosthetic nose. I mean, look how dramatic that change is. Well, when it comes to some of these characters, they do get actual nose jobs. And so Christopher Green and even Mark Dice, they had ridges added to their nose, which really alters the entire face. They get their chins shaved down a little bit, a nose ridge, and hair dye. Looks like a completely different person. I mean, we are talking about masters of disguise. Okay, if you haven't had a chance to sign up for the email newsletter, here's a link. Somebody says I auto-hoaxed Bonnie and Clyde. Yeah, that could be fake too. So many of these things. I mean, they have been using the news media as a propaganda, the government, that is, the oligarchs, the people who control these media outlets. It's not just about money and profit. It's really about governing you from the ground up. This is bottom-up control by the oligarchs, by having their plants everywhere. And, I mean, it's really an old system. The same system that would use religions to scare people and superstitions are now using psychological warfare through the TV. The newsletter. Oh, yes. So if you want to get the newsletter, you go to, I'll put a link here. Now, it's a $1 per month cover charge to get the newsletter, to get access to our Discord server, which is worth it. You also get access to ebooks in advance of everybody else. I do tend to write at least one or two 30 to 50 page books per month if I have time on these topics. We do go into depth. You get access to that material. $1 a month cover charge. Once we get 1,000 people, we're going to get onto AM radio. Listen to this. Nick says, dude, you need medical help. You need serious medication. Okay, Nick, I doubt that you're a doctor. I don't know if you have any skills in psychopathology. Can you actually diagnose somebody that well over the internet? And if you think somebody's ill for questioning the news, then you have fallen for the trap. And he also says stop with the fear porn. Where's the fear porn? Where's the fear? I'm the one saying that the shootings are fake. The serial killings are fake. You're going to call that fear porn? No, the media sells fear porn. So you're a very misguided person, probably a troll. He says I'm actually certified in the military field. I doubt that. I'm like 99% sure you're a liar. Because one thing I know, because I know people in the medical field and the psychiatric field, they do not diagnose people over a single conversation. You couldn't. You wouldn't be able to tell if this was comedy, if this was scripted, if this was satire. You wouldn't be able to say, okay, you need your brain chemistry altered with this drug so that you don't have those thoughts. Like, that's worse than pseudoscience, what you're pushing here. And then you're masquerading as a doctor. Bizarre. You know, last night we had a guy saying that the Vegas shooting was real, and he claimed he knew some of the victims. We do get people who come in here to lie on behalf of Big Brother. So this guy says he's willing to call in. Let's see. Here's my number, 505-510-4226. Why don't you call in with your informed opinion and explain how you can diagnose me as someone who needs medication, and then tell me what medication would correct my opinions. He says, how do you diagnose someone other than talking? You make no sense. Well, here's how you do it. This is how I know you're not a doctor. Observation. You test their blood. You check their anxiety levels. You find out where they live, their income, their work history, their sleep patterns, their diet, their drug intake. It takes a lot of information to diagnose somebody, and you don't know this. I thought you said you were a doctor. We're talking about, like, to get a clinical diagnosis that you could actually prescribe medicine for. You're talking about numerous appointments and evaluations, including a physical. So no, you cannot diagnose somebody over a YouTube channel, Nick, you moron. Anyway, it's been fun. I'll see you all later. This is Terra Incognita Mixtape. I'm going to play the whole thing later, but for now I'm just going to skip to my favorite part, which is Rage Quit Boogie. Shout out to PewDiePie.